Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Thank you all for joining today. My name's Anna Marie Lawrence. I'm a technical specialist in skills with the ILO. I'm actually lucky enough to be based here in Riyadh. So I moved here about 5 months ago to work for the ILO. So this is now my hometown you've visited. And I'm very proud of the Saudis for hosting this event, and any Saudis here, I think you'd be very proud as well for the great job Saudis done in hosting this event and bringing so many people to the country that you may not have otherwise visited. So I'm very proud to be here. So it's a privilege to welcome you all to today's session on skilling, upskilling and nature-based solutions. So as we gather here, we're at a critical juncture in addressing some of the most important global challenges of our time: land degradation, desertification, climate change and biodiversity loss. These are not just environmental issues, however. They're urgent, interconnected challenges that have a profound economic, social and human impact. The ILO has long emphasised that just transition to greener economies must be rooted in skill development. The ILO's work for skills for green jobs highlights this key reality. The green transition is not just about technology and infrastructure, it's about people. So this is why we're here today, because skills are the missing link in turning the potential of nature-based solutions into tangible outcomes. Nature-based solutions, whether through reforestation, soil restoration, or sustainable land management, offer immense promise in combating environmental degradation and building resilience to climate change. However, they also have the power to create decent jobs and drive inclusive, sustainable economic growth. But this potential can only be realised if they're equipped with the right skills, workers are equipped with the right skills. It's about ensuring that everybody, including young people and women, have the skills needed to seize opportunities arising from nature-based solutions. Whether it's in the field of sustainable agriculture, ecosystem restoration, or climate resilience, new green jobs will require workers to master a wide range of technical and soft skills. These include knowledge of environmental science, project management, community engagement, new technologies like GIS and remote sensing. Yet the challenge is not just about providing skills. It's also about ensuring the right skills are accessible to the right people. And this is where ILO's focus on inclusive skill development is critical. For instance, we know that women and youth in many regions, especially in the global south, often are excluded from access to new green job opportunities, despite being the most impacted by economic degradation, environmental degradation. Addressing this gap is essential for ensuring the green economy is not only sustainable but equitable. Today's session, we will explore how to bridge the gap for nature-based solutions, skills gap for nature-based solutions. We'll hear from a range of experts about employment potential in nature-based solutions, as well as the skills needed to capitalise this potential. We'll engage in practical discussions and exercises to reflect on how we can align education, training and policy with the needs of the workforce of the future. Now, in my role as technical support, I work within the Ministry of Human Resource and Social Development here in Saudi, and the Skills Deputyship. The Skills Deputyship provides an important link between education policy and employment policy in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. My Deputy Minister, Dr. Ahmed Al-Sahrani, he was on the agenda to speak today, but unfortunately he's been pulled out at the last minute by the Minister. But I thought before I finish, I would really like to just tell you a couple of the things that we're working on as they relate to this conference. There are two specific pieces of work that are of interest when we're talking about green skills or green competencies or skills for green jobs. One of them is the National Skills Taxonomy that Saudi Arabia is developing within the Ministry of Human Resource and Social Development. This is a platform based on the EU skills standards and job standards that outline more than 500 different skills that are considered green competencies. In addition, they outline a large number of new emerging green jobs. So what this means is that Saudi Arabia now has a baseline for being able to build on some of these jobs from a structural point of view and understanding what skills are going to be needed for these jobs. But it's also really important because it allows Saudi Arabia to embed green competencies and specific green skills within all jobs in the sector. Now, the second thing that we're working on is using the sector skills councils, who are governed by the Ministry of Social Development, to have important social dialogue conversations about green and renewables energy and other aspects depending on the sectors that they're in. So just yesterday, I had the privilege of talking to the construction sector about this area, and the employers in that sector told us that the needs to meet international environmental standards are driving their green recruitment agenda and their green skills agenda. And I don't need to tell you how big that sector is in Saudi at the moment. So the important thing here is that I'm privileged to work as ILO inside the ministry to help make those links on a global stage, on a national stage, and getting the information out to employers wherever they are in this very large country. And that is the role of the skills deputyship that I have the privilege of sitting in. So it is unfortunate that our deputy minister couldn't come here himself to tell you the work that they're doing in this area. But I am very grateful to be able to moderate this panel, and looking forward to hearing from the various experts contributing in this enlightening conversation. So without further ado, I'd just like to hand over to Dr. Murali Thumarukudi, I'm very sorry if I pronounced that wrong, who is the director of the G20 Global Initiative on Land at the UNCCD. And thank you very much for this beautiful venue and allowing us to speak here today. So thank you. I'd like to invite you to the stage. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, ILO, for organizing this very important session in our pavilion, and thank you all for joining this afternoon. The skilling issue is something which our G20 Global Land Initiative is very conscious about. When we started the G20 Global Land Initiative, with a global mandate of achieving 50% reduction in degraded land by 2040, we started to understand what does that mean. If these were to be practicable, many of these targets are never achieved. But if it is to be achieved, what would that mean? It would mean at that point 1 billion hectares of land to be degraded, to be restored. And if you take an average cost of $2,000 per hectare for land to be restored, then we are talking about $2 trillion. $2 trillion. And if you then divide that by 20, then we are talking about $100 billion per year on land restoration alone. That's a huge economy. $100 billion is a large economy. Now, if that money were to be available, where is the skill for restoration actors? We looked at the largest pool of restoration actors, the Society for Ecological Restoration. And they have been active, I think, for the last 30 years, and they have less than 10,000 members. Less than 10,000 members. Are these 10,000 members, expert, going to be able to drive an economy which is 100 billion per year? And this is not going to happen. But if we were to ask universities and say, you start producing nature-based solution experts in hundreds of millions, is the economy ready? The economy is also not ready. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation. So within the Global Land Initiative, we decided that we will not ask for a specific stream of nature-based solution expert or land restoration experts. Instead, we will go and try to hardwire the restoration ideas into existing curricula. And existing curricula where? So we looked at where is land. Land is in agriculture. 4.8 billion hectares of land is in agriculture. 609 million farmers are dealing with agriculture. And they are being supported by hundreds of thousands, probably millions of agricultural experts. If these agricultural experts were to know about restoration, clearly that's enough. That's why we decided to create The first training program directly related to universities on agriculture, sustainable agriculture for land restoration. And I'm very delighted to have Karen Suttmeyer here, who is leading that program. And our target is to reach each of the 972 agricultural schools and universities in the world. Through them, reach probably hundreds of thousands of graduates. We already have 370 universities signed up. Now, not all of them would offer the course. Maybe 10% of them would offer the course. But even between them, we'll start to see tens of thousands of experts coming out per year who is familiar with restoration. Now, then we look at forestry. 4 billion hectares of land under forestry. 300 dedicated schools of forestry around the world. Turkey alone has 100,000 forest engineers. So we want to penetrate that curriculum and then create forestry experts who are familiar with land restoration. We want to do similar things with rangeland. We are working with Urban Institute. That's the second course we are now developing. Urban planning. So we want to penetrate their curriculum. And tomorrow we are talking to a group of landscape architects who have connection with 80 separate agricultural urban planning institutes in the world. So slowly by slowly, we want to penetrate all parts of the land spectrum. So agricultural land, forestry land, range land, urban land, and mining land. But I also want to say one more thing because Karen is here. The idea of penetrating curriculum, we started probably back in 2012, and we did disaster risk reduction and nature-based solutions. And we understood there is one fundamental problem there. Most people who design solutions for disaster management are civil engineers, and they are trained in gray infrastructure. They do not understand nature-based solution. Until the time the civil engineers are converted, nature-based solution at scale is not going to happen in disaster risk reduction. People are trying to promote nature-based solution, but there is no large-scale model emerging. So developing this skill, developing hundreds of thousands of people, maybe 1 million people with skills on nature-based solution, on land restoration, on ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction is so fundamental if we are to achieve our objectives. So I want to thank you once again for organizing this session, organizing it in our pavilion. I unfortunately have to run to the green zone for another event, so I will have to leave, but I will be very ably represented by Joanne, and hand over to the moderator to continue the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much, Doctor. So we would now like to hand over to Natalia Alikisava. Is that correct? Thank you. Forgive me, I was just saying I've just managed to master all the Arabic names, having lived here for 5 months, and now I'm having to have a look at new names again. So thank you. So Natalia is the coordinator of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration from the UNEP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would very shortly explain why I'm here, and then I would go to the subject of what we're discussing now. So the UN Decade is a joint, kind of venture, which is, I'm happy to have also here our partners, advisory board members, and let's say supporters in general, because the decade was announced by the UN General Assembly, and it's basically the call for all the countries and all the partners to scale up restoration. And the decade is running now till 2030. And what we're hoping really that the most of the commitments and the most of the promises are going to be real. I mean, we would like really to see all these billions in terms of restoration, as Murali was referring. I mean, we have even now 1.5 billion, which is also the new kind of target coming up, even higher, right? So with all this scaling up ambition and the thinking how and what, we're really trying to see from the UNDicate point of view what we can do practically speaking. And the UNDicate is co-led by UNEP and FAO. And as I said, we have also lots of global national partners, NGOs, et cetera, who are really coming together as a movement. So we see ourselves as more like facilitating type of mechanism, which is bringing together some knowledge, some well, a bit of money as well, but also a lot of power and a lot of energy to drive with the restoration. And as you've been, I was just exchanging also with Morali about these 500 skills which are needed for environmental, whatever, green type of jobs, right? We see more and more that indeed, once you're referring to restoration, it's pretty complex action. And even today, we have the Land Day, which is going in the Action Dome. And for example, the presentation from Saudi Arabia again was referring also to the need not just to plant something, but really keep it growing and then really ensuring that co-benefits have been shared across different parts of society, different, how to say, kind of actors involved, right? So meaning that in this case, you're not just referring to the need of, let's say, biological process of just putting the seed and maybe adding a bit of water from hydrology point of view or whatever, right? But then you have a lot of accompanying, how to say, space around, which is social, economic, maybe some AI, I don't know, I mean, all these kind of high-tech things, because, for example, also planting and growing something in Saudi Arabia, sometimes it's not the easiest, how to say, kind of location in the world in terms of the restoration action, right? So meaning that what we see from our side is more and more interest in terms of doing the correct way of restoration. So not just to kind of entering from the technical point of view that you put the tree and then you just count, 1 million, 2 million, whatever, right? But you're really trying to ensure that you see the forest behind the tree, right? So then you have biodiversity in this hopefully kind of man-made forest. Then you have people around who are benefiting from this forest. Then you have some maybe agroforestry or whatever other types of production, etc. Right? So it's really a system, and it's quite complicated system. So that's why I'm coming now to the title of my presentation. I'm not sure if I would need the slides. I can simply probably speak, or you prefer me to? Okay, I will do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see it. Mm-hmm. So. As I was shortly opening, we see more and more interest in terms of having restoration also linked to different types of agendas. And yes, now we're at UNCCD, but also earlier this year we were in Cali for UNCBD, and it was also Baku, UNFCCC in between. And it's a lot of discussions how to synergize across this so-called trio, right? So, and restoration is an action which is actually like a red thread going through all these three major conventions in a way that, yes, you can have climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. Yeah. It's target 2 under GBF, it's CBD, and then it's land degradation neutrality here, right? So we're basically tackling it all once we do the restoration. And of course, also what has been discussed here is how we're trying to get more support and more finance coming into the restoration, because it's the way of really linking these all together. But at the same time, it's not just about money, because as we were also a bit discussing before, right? You cannot just do things with money. I mean, that's of course very important resource, and sometimes, of course, that's something which is really stimulating things. But if people are not really doing the right restoration and the correct restoration, then these money are wasted, right? So, for example, we were just discussing earlier that we have one of the UNDicate flagships, which is working with forest fires. So you restore the forest, you put the forest, but then if the fire is coming, then all your money and all your efforts are just gone, right? So if you don't do it correct, then you're not in the right, how to say, spot and the right endeavor. So that's why we're discussing now more and more in terms of the skills and the way how to make it happen. I mean, even having money and having understanding that we would like to do it. And for example, also the last example on the slide, just to demonstrate that, for example, if we're really Here also it's a lot of discussions about the rangelands, and the next COP is going to happen in Mongolia, and Mongolia as the next presidency is really pushing for the pasture and rangelands. Even for these, if you would like to have the number of rangers, I mean for the land keepers or whatever how you call them, the number should be increasing more than five-fold. So it's 5 times more compared to what we have at the moment. And then of course these people should be trained, and they should really understand what they do and how to do it right. In terms of what kind of skills we're looking at, as I said, yes, initially it was a lot of focus on more technical elements, like you have to know the species which you put. Hopefully it would be indigenous species. Hopefully you put the right amount of water. Hopefully you have proper soil and whatever, right? I mean, it's on one side, right? But then on other side, it's more and more prominent, which has been coming like financing, planning, design, whatever, monitoring, evaluation, research, etc., right? So meaning we've been always asked, like, how would you measure the restoration? So it's not just the number of trees, especially if the forest fire is coming, then some of them are gone. But how far did you restore, and what are the co-benefits? I mean, it's one of the things which is always popping up, like, yes, you have your restoration action, but then what people are getting out of this, what nature is getting out of this, right? So that's why we have more and more, how to say, multifaceted type of skills which are needed for restoration. And if we go a bit through the types of let's say skills, yes, we can look more on the financing. Why also on the financing? Because it's more and more blended financing. So it's not just about the governments. I mean, here, of course, in Saudi Arabia, it's a bit different because it's a lot of state funds. But in some other locations, some other countries, I'm living now in Kenya. I'm based in Nairobi. So I'm sorry to say that the state the government funding is not the most prominent and not the most driving, how to say, the restoration, right? So that's why we're saying, yes, we would like to have the private sector coming in. We would like to have different types of innovative type of financing, blended green bonds, etc., etc. So that's one of the areas, for example, right? Then the second one is planning and design. Yes, even for planning the restoration, you have to see the process in a more holistic way, right? So as I said, it's not just planting something and then leaving, but the most of restoration actions are long-term restoration. So meaning that you have to ensure that within, I don't know, next 10 years at least or whatever, you have the system in place, which is keeping this system alive, thriving, improving, hopefully expanding, etc., right? That's also one of the skills. And then, for example, the last one, I mean, it's not the last, but just how to say, to reflect on this, of course, all types of implementation activities, right? So again, if you are kind of ensuring that you have indigenous people, where would you get the local seeds and seedlings, right? They're not coming by themselves just because you want them, right? So you have to ensure that you have proper supply of certain kind of maintenance, whatever processes. You have certain knowledge and certain understanding of how to do things, and then you run your implementation based on these enabling conditions. And here I would like to give you a bit kind of appetite of the report, which is coming actually in, well, just in 2 days. And it's so-called the NBS Jobs Report. And we had the first edition, which was, sorry? Okay. Then I will probably skip it, because then come on Saturday, you see 7 December at half past 12 for the more information on the report. Yeah. So just some kind of summary. If we're looking at the type of key, how to say, elements, like for the skills, so they can be grouped in several, how to say, kind of pockets or whatever. The one would be more, how to say, on the project management side, as we discussed. So because you have continuum, right? You have this restoration process, which is, I mean, to be successful, this should be worked out, right? Then you can have technical skills, which are like green skills, but not always linked to restoration or NBS, like carbon accounting, sustainable farming, etc., etc. And then you can have these C types of skills, for example, which are really restoration techniques. So meaning that once you have them all together, then you hopefully kind of in the right place and the right spot. Again, probably I would not go too much in describing this, because This would be also coming in the report. And what I really like from my point of view, and I think it's our future, how to say, kind of request for all types of new jobs and new kind of vacancies which are coming out, it's really having this more interdisciplinary thinking, right? Because yes, you can be really good technician, or you can be really great project manager, but you really have to have something which has been merging in between. Yeah, and I'm all day in, so that's why it's coming a bit. So just to finish, we have a great example from the UN Decade Restoration flagship. And in this case, it was really practical work done in Kenya, Mali, Senegal, Tanzania, Uganda. And it's focusing on agroforestry. But the idea is really that you have the agroforestry is just one, how to say, an entry point to the ecosystem restoration. And then what do you have around? Of course, you have a lot of technical type of trainings in terms of how to do this type of restoration, right? But at the same time, you have quite a lot of, for example, extension workers around, right? So you really have to reach to all these different farmers and also speak to them and make them involved into all these agroforestry restoration type of activities, right? So it's another soft skill again. It's communication, advocacy, etc., right? So yeah, probably I'll just stop here because the next presentation is coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Thank you. I really liked what you said about the interdisciplinary skills, because that raises the question around interdisciplinary curriculum and training and having skills embedded within programs that are cross-disciplinary. And it was actually part of the conversation yesterday with the Saudi construction employers, where they were talking about engineers having project management skills, but embedding green sort of aspects and competencies within the project management program. So this is a really practical example of how Saudi is trying to do it. So thank you for that. I would like to hand over now to my distinguished colleague from ILO, Meta, who is our technical specialist in just transition for the Arab region. Thank you, Meta.
Thank you so much, Anna-Marie. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks again to the Restoration Pavilion for having us here. And congratulations on your beautiful space. I'm going to pick up a little bit where Natalia actually left off. And I'm going to start with something unconventional, because I have prepared a small group 2x2 kind of exercise. So if I can ask you all to stand up and move so that there's no space between you. So you can stay here, for example, you can stay here. And then what Natalia will do, she will move to the next side so that you all sit next to someone. So for example, yes, exactly. So yes, please. Also you guys here, yeah? Joanne. Yeah. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up on the point on skills, right? And we're going to do a small exercise on thinking about how these skills are going to be changing. So I had prepared a presentation, but I'll only use 2 slides. The first one is for you to think about how the labor market changes as our economy is changing. So as we're applying nature-based solutions, as we're moving towards environmentally sustainable economies, etc., whether or not that is targeting climate change or environmental degradation, we know that the labor market is going to change. And it will primarily change in 4 different ways. There's a lot of focus on the new jobs created, right? We're all thinking about the new kinds of jobs, the foresters, the sustainable agricultural practitioners, etc. We know that there will be a net surplus of jobs created. There's a positive narrative. There's also a lot of focus on the jobs lost. And that makes sense, because if you lose your job due to a transition, that is detrimental to yourself and your family, whether or not that's your job or your livelihoods. But actually, the largest change that we'll see in the labor market are the 2 other bubbles. So being that some jobs will be substituted and some jobs will be redefined. Why does that matter from a skills perspective? That is because we have to ensure that the skills are transferable so that we create a smooth transition between the different bubbles. So as jobs will be either substituted or transformed, they will change a little bit. Maybe your technical skills will be more or less the same, but the core skills will change, or the other way around. So that's what Natalia was also explaining here. Yes. The AI. Ooh, so I guess AI can both be a technical and a core skill, right? So it depends on how you think about integrating AI into your job, being able to work with IT and technology more broadly. But if you're moving towards like an AI engineering programmer, then it turns into a technical skill. So what these bubbles show are basically like how the labor market will change due to the green transition. So that could, I don't know, I assume the changes will be similar in like a technological transition, but being a just transition specialist and focusing on the climate and environment, I'll stay within my area. Whether or not AI will be created. Okay. That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to it. But I guess that there will be effects across the four. So the lady here is asking what will be the effects of AI implementation, and what will the size of the bubbles, so to speak, be. But I guess there will be effects across the four bubbles, that there will be new jobs created, some jobs lost, etc. So the exercise that I have prepared for you is, okay, maybe I will use 3 slides because this is quite nice. Looking at how some skills will be in higher demand and lower demand from the energy transition, right? And what we're really looking at is the intersect here. And what will probably surprise many of you is that in the energy transition, we see that there's a particularly high demand also for several sort of core skills. So it's a mix of the two, right? So what I have prepared for you is a little sheet that you can discuss with the person next to you. I have prepared 4 different kinds of job titles. I want you to think about what would, in case you are, for example, a farmer, a conventional farmer today, what will that farmer job look like in a future where that is a green job? In this case, sustainable agricultural farming, for example. The same goes for, there's also a supply chain manager, there's a policymaker, a politician, and there's a teacher. So on purpose, they're quite different, right? And the idea is that you'll be working with the person next to you. Maybe you will be 2, maybe you will be 3, and you can scribble down a few points. Thank you so much. Across the 3, or across the different. So if you don't have a pen, I know that the Restoration Pavilion has a pen. I feel like a TV host. We have only 5, so you might be we only have 5 or 6 or so. So you can share with the. Yeah, so work together across and you can choose the occupation that talks to you. In case you don't have to start at the top. So you'll see that it's also on the screen now in case you need it. So you can think about what would a green jobs title be for this person? What would be the current skills need that you think? Think of some core skills, some technical skills. So let's, for example, take the teacher. Maybe you think, okay, it could be a generic teacher. It could be maybe a history teacher. So in the future, maybe it will be a history teacher that also, so now they have some technical skills, knowledge of history and what has happened, and maybe you have a specialty in, I don't know, Pan-African history. So, in order to make this a green job, what kind of skills would they need to know? Maybe they need to know something about natural resources and distribution, etc., etc. And then ignore the skills policy response because I didn't have the chance to talk about that, so you can ignore that. But try and think about the other ones. And I will give you 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, 1 minute left. All right. So the idea with the exercise is simply to make you start thinking about how jobs will change. And a natural question would be to you, how do you think your jobs will change, right? What do you think you know today that's relevant? Is there something new you will need to learn? So the exercise is done now. I'm going to hand my microphone to these ladies over here so they can talk you through what they did. I think you focused on teachers. Is that correct? Yeah. So please present how you did the exercise across the different categories. And introduce yourself as well, please.
Good afternoon. This is Caribbean Fame. That's the name of our group. And because there were 4 options here, and it was very funny because we asked, oh, which one you gravitate to? That's what our moderator asks. And my profession is in 3 of these 4 organizations. So it was funny. So we looked at the green job title and we decided that we would come up with an innovative title of Sustainable and Resilient Educator. when they asked about the degree of skills change, we thought there would be a medium degree skills change, because you can be an educator depending on which level you're looking at, with as simple as a teaching certificate, which would go into the next field, which is current skills needed. And then with the new skills needed, we thought you would have to beef up your educational platform a bit and go maybe get a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD, depending on the level that you're teaching at. Thank you very much, Caribbean Fame.
Woohoo! Give it up for Caribbean Fame. All right, thank you so much. This was not, I had prepared a bunch more stuff for you guys, but we're running a little bit short on time. So I wanted to thank you all for indulging me in the little group exercise. Feel free to reflect on your own job, your own skills. Is there something that you think you need to upgrade yourself on, re-educate yourself on? How do you think that your own job will be changing? So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Anna Marie for the panel.
Thank you, Meta. That was really interesting, actually. Yeah. Big clap for Meta. That was really interesting. It makes you think, and it's harder than you think it would be, right? Actually having to think through this. I think if we all got together, we could probably change the world, change all these jobs for the whole world if we had enough time. So thank you. I'd just like to invite our panelists up, please. I think we can sit in any particular order, maybe starting here. There's only 3 of us, so I can sit here. I haven't got a clock. Yeah, what's the time? I'll show you. Wait. Okay. So thank you very much for joining us here today. I'm actually going to allow them to introduce themselves. They can probably do a better job at explaining what they do than myself. So please, Joanne should start. Okay, do you have a microphone?
Hello, everyone. My name is Joanne Lee. I lead stakeholder engagement with the G20 Global Land Initiative and a program officer at UNCCD. Thank you for coming.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Batsitik, and I am a youth negotiator from the Mongolian delegation to COP16 UNCCD, and I'm also a graduate research student at the University of Tokyo and conducting research on nature-based solutions.
You're popular.
Hi, everyone. My name is Haytham Abdo. I'm general manager for Desert Technologies, Saudi-based company focused in smart infrastructure solutions.
Great. We have a fan club. That's brilliant. Thank you. I would like to start with Joanne Lee. First of all, your space here is amazing. You've done a great job. So thank you very much for providing this beautiful space. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the G20 Global Land Initiative and how skills development fits into the work that you're doing with this.
No, absolutely. Well, Murali touched upon it briefly in this opening, but we have several different activities related to skills development. The first one is the university course that he mentioned, that my colleague Karen Sudemeyer is leading. So we've developed this agricultural solutions course, the master's course with several modules up to 50 hours, and we've done trainings of teachers all around the globe. And so, if you want to sign up, here's the QR code on these wonderful boxes. So please do sign up for that course. And we're currently in development of an urban planning course as well. Another activity we have is working with youth ecopreneurs. And so we provide them with master classes and other trainings, connect them with Google startup program that they have, as well as law firms to provide them with legal advice. And so, they're providing jobs in their countries, and we want to help them scale up their businesses. And so that's another one we have. And, one more is just providing trainings in the areas of land restoration. We've done various trainings with biosaline agriculture, urban planning, post-mining land restoration, GIS and remote sensing. I think that's one that you mentioned. Maybe I think Natalia mentioned as a real need related to NBS solutions. So that's another area. We have several more, but I know we're limited in time, so that's all I'll go over.
Thank you. I'd love to hear more about this course. Let's see how we go for time because it's fascinating. And you're graduating thousands of people. That's really exciting. I'm just going to move on to Bazizik. Thank you very much for being here. I know that you're very busy this week with negotiations, so I think your perspective's really interesting because you're hearing a lot of different conversations on this topic. How important, from your perspective, is job creation and skills for young people? How do you see this fitting or coming into the negotiations you're doing at the moment?
Yes, so skills development and job creation for young people is a crucial part within the UNCCD negotiations, as well as ensuring economic stability for countries and also addressing the pressing environmental challenges, specifically those tackled by UNCCD. And for Mongolia, 1/3 of the population is youth aged between 15 to 34.
Wow.
So their potential to be agents of change is huge. However, to realize this potential, we need to make deliberate efforts and investments in youth skills development and jobs creation. And within the UNCCD negotiations framework, of course, youth skills development is integral in achieving land degradation neutrality and desertification. So specific projects like land restoration, afforestation that align with the nature-based solutions principles that aim to address land degradation and desertification need a very skilled workforce. So training young people to work for these NBS initiatives will address several issues at the same time, those related to DLDD and those related to decent work. So currently, the largest NBS initiative in Mongolia is the Billion Tree National Project, which aims to increase the forest cover to 9% of the total territory by 2030 by forest restoration and afforestation and reforestation. So focusing on the development of the very specific skills that are related to this type of project, not only support the project, but also create a generation of leaders and professionals that will tackle the problems of land degradation and desertification for many, many years to come. And within the UNCCD context, I also want to add and touch upon the principles of equity and inclusivity, because youth in rural Mongolia and as well as the other countries are the closest to land degradation and its impacts. However, they face very limited opportunities. So I would like to highlight the importance of training and investing in the skills development of rural youth to fully utilize the synergy and potential of nature-based solutions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And that actually segues really nicely into Hatham and what your work is at Desert Technologies. Now, we know that land degradation and desertification has a direct impact negatively on jobs, but your business is looking at ways of turning that into an opportunity for nature-based solutions. I think the kind of opportunities we would hope to see addressing the challenge that you just described in Mongolia. So what are you doing in Saudi Arabia in this area to harvest those opportunities?
Thank you very much, Anna Marie. So Desert Technology, as I said, is a holding company. I head up a division focused in rural electrification and providing water solutions for remote communities and off-grid systems. Here in Saudi Arabia, as well as we focus quite heavily in sub-Saharan Africa, we aim to tackle communities where agriculture has missing gaps in energy as well as water. So we aim to provide sustainable systems, providing resources from the local communities rather than bringing these resources from several thousand kilometers away or using existing diesel generating systems. So we have an application today in which we provide water plus power. Through our systems, we have an IoT dashboard in which we have sensors across our systems, including the irrigation systems that go from our water stations to the farmers. We have sensors in the pipelines in which that it can control and manage the flow of water and how much liters of water is going into providing the irrigation required for agricultural purposes. And then we also manage and supervise the kind of vegetation growth so that it could provide resource and data to the farmers in the local communities and engaging how much water you actually need in providing to your agricultural plantation. So again, there's a lot of waste going on, and that's due to lack of data, lack of education, lack of best practices and agricultural methods that some countries are accommodated to through perhaps maybe vertical farming, which is quite popular today in the West and now here. But how do rural communities get the same level of access of that same technology or of that education in these plantations? So what we want to do is we provide through our systems, moving away from diesel generators, moving away from wasting water, in which that we can empower these communities. And then on top of that, we don't want to just drop those systems, and these systems are usually thousands of kilometers away from any heavily populated locations. After installing these systems, we provide a very in-depth training on how to operate, how to install, how to maintain these solutions so that these local communities can then operate and become more self-independent and self-sufficient on their own. Rather than empowering my O&M team, I empower them to operate these systems.
Wow, that's fantastic. Really, really interesting. It's a great story for Saudi, really. And I can see how it would be relevant for other countries as well. I feel compelled that I have to ask on behalf of our Caribbean sister here the question about AI. I know this is not what we were going to talk about, but I have to ask it. And what is the role of AI in your sensing systems? And do you see a bigger role for AI in the work that you're doing in desert technology?
Absolutely. AI, and right now our system is heavily on IoT, so data processing through, as I said, sensors in our systems in which that it provides either power or water. And we collect how much water is being used in the agricultural fields, and we monitor exactly the vegetation. And we provide that data through a very easy dashboard in which the end user or the farmer or the agriculture operator is using. And that data, and then we also have a weather forecasting system for predictive weather forecasting, as well as we collect data from international organizations in which, who monitor the weather patterns of that local region. So rather than using like the in-ground water source, maybe it can predict when a rainy season is about to start. So then rather than wasting the groundwater that you have or the river water that you have, you're using the natural water coming from from above. So we do a lot of data processing and a lot of IoT and a lot of and then the AI essentially will provide recommendations to the farmers in which that they could potentially say, okay, look, weather season is coming, rainy season is coming. You don't need to use the water reverse osmosis system, so you can save that, and then in the end, it would be able to provide better methods, I would say, or recommendations, I would say, to the farmers so that they could perhaps improve on their systems.
Okay, very good. And this sounds very high tech. It would naturally require quite a good level of understanding, at least by the farmers, or skills certainly for your company. How does skill development come into this?
Well, we aim to make like anything like the iPhone. One reason why most people like the iPhone is the user friendly of the iOS. So our dashboard needs to be user friendly for all kinds of people of different levels of education. So that's obviously the paramount in making sure that our interface of the dashboard is user friendly. The second point is that, again, these systems are heavy in technology, and you can't just dump them and then let them, operate, because I've been to several refugee camps where I've seen systems from different donors, and these systems are only 2 years old, but you look at the quality of the system because of the lack of O&M to it, these systems look like they're over a decade old. So it's critical for us and empowers the locals that in which when we provide our solutions, that we provide different levels of certifications and training, hopefully for them to operate their local business, but two, that hopefully for the skill set in which that they may find other job opportunities or within they know their local market 10 times better than I could, from my desktop and from my office here in Riyadh. They could then find solutions or solutions to problems in which they can identify innovative solutions for their local communities. So we provide this certification, but DT is a local company, a Saudi-based company. And as we're encouraged by our shareholders to now navigate internationally, and we're, as I said, heavily focused in sub-Saharan Africa, now coming into Asia, we'd like to partner with international organizations to make sure that these certifications are well recognized and reputable, so these people can have job opportunities, anywhere.
That's great. Thank you. It's a fantastic example of the private sector working with skill development on these exact issues. So thank you. Back to you, Joanne. I'm just wondering from the past initiatives, what lessons have you learned about scaling up nature-based solution projects? Do you see skill development as being part of that?
Yes, well, definitely. So something that I've learned from one of our trainings, we give trainings on post-mining land restoration, as I said, and something that the experts always highlight is the need to involve the local community, like through all the planning process. So even before you begin the restoration work, you have to have stakeholder consultations with everyone in the community, because the end use of the land has to be beneficial for them, right? Because the mining activities was providing them with livelihoods, economic activity, but then now you need to be able to use that land in a way that is also productive for them. And so I think that's an important, that's lessons learned from something that, from the economic activity such as mining. Another example is we've provided trainings on the gender issues, and we've worked with women in small-scale mining. And a lot of them are in their communities. They may be doing the small-scale mining in illegal activity. And so we need to reskill them in a way so that they're able to restore that land instead. And, you mentioned that in the beginning as well, to provide skills development for women. And I think this is one way that, we try to contribute towards that.
Thank you. So the woman and youth theme has come up again as well, hasn't it, for the inclusive skills development. But Cesar, before we open the floor to the audience, I'm not sure how we're doing for time. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to ask you one last question. Mongolia faces significant challenges in desertification and land degradation. From your perspective, what role, and you've kind of covered this already, what the role is for youth to play in this in nature-based solutions? If they're a third of the population, they have an enormous role, obviously. What are the challenges that would need to be overcome, whether they be from a policy level or an education level, or how do you enable them to play that bigger role in the future of Mongolia?
Okay, yes, desertification and land degradation is one of the main environmental challenges of Mongolia, and 76.9% of the total territory is affected by desertification. Affected by land degradation and desertification. So, as a youth, first way we can contribute is to advocate for the potential of nature-based solutions and its potential synergies to provide co-benefits for all of the environmental challenges, and participate in nature-based solutions designing and implementing processes, and advocating for its synergies, as I mentioned before. And second is, I think youth can also serve as a bridge between policymakers and the local communities in designing nature-based solutions, because for Mongolia, the rural communities have a deep understanding on rotational grazing and water conservation and such practices. So it's important to include those traditional knowledge in designing nature-based solutions, so youth can be a communicator or bridge between them. And second is, Mongolia has a lot of potential for different types of nature-based solutions, including land restoration, wetland restoration, and also NBS on rangelands. So youth can also start those initiatives within these frameworks to promote nature-based solutions for green skills development, and also promote green skills development for nature-based solutions. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I would now like to open the floor for 2 questions because we're running out of time. But we would love somebody to direct some questions to our panelists. Anyone have any questions?
No? Yes? All right.
Well, I would love to ask, because when we talk about job creation and also nature-based solution, there's a significant difference between generations and also genders. And I have not yet seen, and maybe this is also my own fault, I feel enough attention on how we have to approach this in an intergenerational, but also in a gender diverse way. Because again, like an older woman who has a lot of experience with the land has a very different relation than maybe someone who is more tech savvy, as we already heard over there. But also, how can this intergenerational, cross generation actually support each other? And I think there we need to be very sensitive before we are kind of putting off people in the aim to actually support them, because we have been taking an kind of an approach which is not sensitive to the differences we might embody.
That's a really interesting question.
No?
I would like you guys to think about who wants to take that question while we're looking for another question.
One way that we try to promote this intergenerational dialogue is to, as I mentioned about the Youth Ecopreneur Program, we provide them with mentors. And so we bring in people from the business world, such as the Google startups and, Sidley Austin, a law firm, to provide them with legal advice to really help them grow their business, right? So that they can provide jobs to the other youth and community in their countries. Another way is that, I think another lesson learned from a lot of the capacity building workshops we've had is working with schools. Like when you want to integrate land restoration education within schools, it's important to bring in the elderly, the ones who have the indigenous knowledge, the traditional knowledge, bring them into the school so that they can provide all their stories and knowledge to the school children, and in order to involve the community and businesses as well. And I think that's another way to really grow this new generation of young people who care about the environment and will help to restore it in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for answering. Yeah, sure. We've got one more question. Yeah. Yes, please, Haitham.
I can't speak about a lot, but what I've seen, and we operate in 7 different countries in Africa, it's mostly, and what I've seen during fortunate enough to see my experience over there, it's actually the women over there doing a lot of the heavy lifting. They're the one walking thousands of kilometers in Africa for collection of water for their children, thousands of kilometers for health, to go to a hospital for their children, for themselves, for their husband. But it's really the women I've seen, and I can't speak, but I haven't been everywhere. But in Africa, it's the women who are doing most of the heavy lifting. So what we try to do is, and when we had an opportunity to provide training, we opened an application and we opened it for both men and women. And I was shocked to see that 70% were women applicants looking for engineering roles or looking for roles to operate these systems. So I was really encouraged by that and amazed and taken back by it. So we have the opportunity through these technologies, through these solutions, directly or indirectly, to improve the quality of life for women, if I'm allowed to say that. And we have been fortunate enough to start very few job creations for women, but indirectly improve their lives from, cooking in, these small tents with firewoods, or perhaps walking thousands of kilometers just to collect water when now water is available in their small communities. So that gives them the ability and free time to now I don't have to waste half my day collecting water. Water is here. Now I can think of something else to support my family. So it goes through, initiatives from the private sector, initiatives from the governments, initiatives from local communities, and, empowering women and making sure that, we can improve their quality of life. I hope I touched on it.
That is great. It's fantastic because you're talking about not just job creation, but enabling people through giving them time to then be empowered through the ability to access jobs. That's fantastic. It's a great way to look at this. Did we have one more question? Anybody? No? Okay. That's it? No more questions from anybody? Okay. I was just wondering if anybody would like to have any last closing comments before we finish the session.
I mean, you mentioned AI, so I feel as if I have to plug
Yes,
this in.
please do.
But next
Everyone
week
wants to
we'll
know.
be showing the first AI-created movie on land restoration, and so that will be happening in this pavilion. My colleague Apurva knows the exact dates and time for that since she helped coordinate it, so you can talk to her. My colleague Karen is also here if you have any questions about the agricultural course or the upcoming urban planning one. But thank you again, and thank you to ILO for planning this great event.
Thank you. And thank you very much to my panelists. It's been really fascinating. I wish we had more time, actually. I've got lots of questions for you. Good luck with your negotiations and good luck with your business. And I think it's fantastic that we have someone from the private sector here who's doing this work and we're able to work together, public-private. This is a really fantastic discussion. And thank you very much for representing this pavilion and the G20 initiative. Thank you to Vimeta for organising. And we're going to be doing a photo? Ah, yes, yes. I'm very, very sorry. I'm very sorry. How could I forget that? So we have a fantastic, I think this is a really exciting initiative to close with. A poem. Just one moment. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I was very excited to hear about you doing this. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a wonderful way to close a session like this. So I'd like to hand over to Paneet Kaur, who's the founder of Poetry for Planet, to close with a poem. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And Mete, thank you so much for inviting me again. It's our fourth time collaborating. And I wrote my poem just there sitting. So thank you so much again. Here it goes. When I flirted with the sea for the first time in 23 years of my existence, just 2 weeks ago in Baku, nothing remained of me. Just the sand curling under my feet, the waves playing nature's own piano, the wind sending shivers down Caspian's spine, the sun glistening on my skin, reminding me how love might feel like for the first time. That's all that remained of me. But isn't that all that I am? And so are you. Yet we speak of nature as if it's our relative from Mars. Away and so further away. We seek her somewhere outside, in the greens and blues, when it's all within. The desert of deprivation, the erosion of indigeneity, the axe of alienation, chipping slowly at our roots. However, neither you nor I are to be blamed. It's nature's dance gone awry. Let's instead take a moment to reconnect and bow down to the nature within ourselves, to honor the nature outside, until we realize that it's all the same, outside and within, deserving of the same labor of love. I ended on labor of love, so that's how our partnership started in COP28 with ILO. So also a brief introduction about myself. I'm a poet and also the founder of Poetry for Planet. So I started using poetry as a medium of healing myself first, and then I gave it to the climate community. I hit rock bottom mentally in 2020, and that's when poetry emerged for me. And now I'm giving it as a gift to the climate community, to the broader community to heal themselves, because it has healed me. And there are lots of people, and Mete actually, she wrote the first poem after our session. So this is what happens, when you touch hearts. It's not about writing a perfect poem. It's about voicing whatever your thoughts are, whatever you're going through in your language. So at Poetry for Planet, we are trying to decolonize the climate narrative and highlight the stories of resilience from the global majority. Thank you so much for having me once again.
That is wonderful. And I love that idea that poetry can heal. It can heal the planet. It can heal you. It can heal us as a community. It's a labor of love. I love that. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the rest of your time here in Riyadh. If you're visiting, enjoy your stay. And thank you very much for having me. Thank you.